All right, here we are. So, welcome to Oral Sex Tips here with Good Vibrations. I am educator Andy, and we have Carol Queen here. I just want to give you all a little background about who we are before we start, and a little bit about Good Vibrations in case this is your first time joining us. So, I am Andy Duran. I'm the education director here for Good Vibrations, and I've worked for Good Vibes for about 16 years now. And Carol is my colleague in the education department. Carol, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm the staff sexologist at Good Vibrations. I've been around for 30 years. But time flies when you're having fun and helping people have pleasure. And I also write some books, including the Sex and Pleasure book, which is where some of our illustrations are going to be sourced from tonight. We'll show you when we get there.
Awesome. So if you are new to Good Vibrations and are joining us for the first time, welcome. Good Vibrations has been around for over 40 years. We've been around since 1977. And we were started by a woman named Joni Blank, who was really focused on creating a space where women felt comfortable talking about sexuality and having access to pleasure products in a safe environment. And our company still holds those standards today in a feminist model that includes everybody, all encompassing. And we're happy to provide these workshops as a way to reach out to folks, especially at your home if you couldn't come into our stores. So let's get it started today with a very amazing topic, oral sex tips. And this is kind of a broad topic. So we'll start breaking it down into a few of the different ways in which you can perform oral sex. But I'd love to know a little bit about y'all. Just a little bit about what brought you here today. So we're going to bring up this poll. And when it comes to oral sex, which do you prefer? Giving oral, receiving oral, or both equally? And I'll give you all a little bit of time just to think about that if you need to, and then answer. We'll let those start rolling in. Tough questions.
I'm liking the looks of this, Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've still got a little time, right? That we're leaving the poll up. I don't want to jump the gun. All right. Well, we have got 89 people who voted. Thank you all for letting us know what was up in your oral lives. 22% of you like giving oral the most. 21% like receiving oral the most. 56% like both equally, which is why I said I like these results. No pressure for anybody who likes it any particular way, but if you like both equally, that gives you more to enjoy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about first what is oral sex, because that's something that can get confusing for some people. It's a broad term. It can cover a lot of different types of oral pleasure. One of the things that we'll be focusing here on today is cunnilingus, which is we'll use both slang and technical terms, so pussy eating, things like that. And then we'll talk about fellatio or blowjobs, and we'll also talk about analingus or rimming. And so those are the three areas we're focusing on. But I do like to remind people that oral sex is way more broad than that. I mean, you can definitely fuck the entire body with your mouth, and that's something that is, very flexible in that oral sex can cover a whole big part of the body and not just one specific area. It's not due to just the genitals. So that's something that I wanted to kind of make sure that people kind of note, because you can definitely spend a whole hour on orally pleasing nipples or other areas. So those things are definitely included.
Kissing can feel like sex for sure.
What was that?
Kissing can feel like sex for sure.
Absolutely. Really absolutely. Another thing that I kind of like to talk about when it comes to oral sex is there tends to be some kind of preconceived notions about who is doing what during oral, or who is kind of the giver or the receiver. And, when it comes to terms like topping and bottoming, Typically, it's been referred to as the doer and the doee. But a lot of times when people have this idea of sex being very penetrative focused, they might think of oral as the person that is receiving oral is the doer, where somebody else might think of the person who is performing oral is the doer. And so it can get kind of confusing with that. But what I like to let people know is that you can approach oral sex from all different angles. You could definitely be somebody who's, focused on pleasing your partner with oral and kind of taking that on. You could be one of our 20 odd people, 20 odd percent that really enjoy just performing that. The mouth also really counts as a sex organ when we're talking about oral sex. So many people can receive stimulation and even orgasm from the sensation of their partner in their mouth. So the only thing that really comes with these sex acts is the sex act itself doesn't have a topping or bottoming identity. It's really the people who use them can play with it in those ways. Great. So let's go over some anatomy, because while we're talking about these 3 pieces of anatomy, we're gonna have to do that. So Carol, would you like to go over the anatomy of oral with homologs?
Yes, and here's this awesome picture from the Sex and Pleasure book that Amanda Lafreniere made for us that talks about homologs. And homologs are basically a way of talking about and illustrating how the genitals come from the same basic place. They are served by nerves in similar ways. A lot of you have probably heard the phrase opposite sex your whole lives. I have such an allergy to that term. It's this idea that we can never know what each other's experience is like. There are 2 sexes and they're opposite. We've been in this business for way too long to believe any of that kind of stuff. And the homologs helps understand why this is interesting to know about when you're thinking about oral, because the parts of the genitals of cis women, cis man, or really anybody come from the same place. The clitoris and the penis are homologs, especially the head of the penis. The vulva, the labia of the vulva is homologous to the testicles, the ball, actually the scrotal sac that surrounds the testicles. All the parts have a relationship with the parts on people of different gender configurations. So when you're up against some genitals, check them out and find out from the person attached to them what they like the most. Just knowing something about penises, vulvas, doesn't tell you everything that you want to know when it comes to oral.
Absolutely. So let's go to some of the specifics with anatomy setups. Let's start with the penis. Sea-Dog, you want to do that?
Yeah, look, the penis is on a person's body, so the front of the body right there. And what we want to do is look at some of the things about the penis that are good to know for oral, because people often want to know where the most sensitive part of the penis is. I don't know if you can see my little thing, my little arrow waving around here, but the
You see
gland.
my penis.
Hey, look, you can hold up your silicone penis right there. So the glans
Soft
penis,
skin, but
often known as the head of the penis, is typically the most sensitive part, and especially where the 2 edges come together in that little notch that's called the frenulum. Look where Andy's pointing, that's the place. And that is often the most sensitive part on the entire penis. If you think about oral and the idea that you've got to get the whole thing into your mouth in order to stimulate it properly, that can be great. People can really like that, but a tongue or lips on the frenulum right there is often a really magical experience for the receiver too. So you see where the foreskin would be, and in fact, it would be attaching there at the frenulum if a person was not circumcised or uncut, as we say on the street. And that would mean that the person would have a little extra to play with, and often that tissue is super sensitive as well. So don't be afraid if the penis that you're meeting has got a foreskin. Just Engage with the person, find out what they like about it, and do a little exploring if you've never met one before. The urethral opening is where ejaculate will come out if ejaculate happens, or pre-ejaculate, often whether there is going to be ejaculation or not, can be found coming out through the urethral opening. So if wetness is happening, that's often where that's coming from. And inside, of course, you've got the corpus spongiosum and the corpus cavernosa. Corpus cavernosa fills up with blood, which is what makes an erection. This penis that we're looking at that Amanda LaFrene drew is not particularly erect, but let me just say that that doesn't mean that it cannot receive pleasure. So if you've got a soft penis in front of you during oral, many people love playing with that and love being played with. Don't let that send you off into the night thinking that there was not an erection. You can have fun whether or not there's an erection when you're playing orally.
You can even orgasm and ejaculate without an erection. So that's important to know for some people. And one of the things I wanted to mention in there, because you mentioned circumcision and uncircumcised, is that there will be a slight difference in the texture and the feel of the head of the penis if it is circumcised or not circumcised. You'll find that if it's uncircumcised, that underneath the foreskin, it'll feel more like mucosa or kind of the interior of your mouth where it's wet, as opposed to if it's circumcised and it's going to feel drier, more like the outside of your skin. Cool, let's go to the next one. So the vulva, and as we mentioned before with homologs, there's going to be a lot of similarities. So as the scrotal sac is homologous to the outer labia, you'll notice that's where hair growth is. There is also some great sensation that can be felt there. I hear that from people with balls all the time of, oh, I wish that my partner played with my balls more. And it's actually very true for folks with labia, that they sometimes enjoy the stimulation of the lips. Some touch, some licking, some sucking and pulling can really kind of provide some extra sensation of the area. The clitoris is going to be up towards the tip there. And one of the things that you can see on this great drawing is the 3D illustration of the clitoris, which I have a 3D model right here. And so you can see that the tip of the clitoris, if we're looking at it, this area is going to be, the tip of the iceberg. It's the part that we see, know, and love, and it's going to receive all that great stimulation, but it can also be felt throughout this entire kind of internal part of the clitoris as well, that's deep in the body. So stimulating the clitoris is an important part of the vulva and oral anatomy.
And that also means that you can stimulate the clitoris, the legs of the clitoris anyway, from inside the vagina. So sometimes people will include vaginal play with their oral on a vulva and clitoris having person. We'll talk more about that, but just remember that's a pretty fun thing to do as well. And the urethra is going to be right underneath the clitoris in this particular body configuration. The anus winds up being in the same place for just about everyone. And we'll talk more about that in a second. So there's actually lots going on, no matter what gender identity somebody has, no matter what, as I like to say, what they've got and what they call it, because it all starts out coming from the same kind of tissue in the first place.
Absolutely. All right. Take it away, C.
And hey, here, this is appears to be another penis person. All of this intestines business, you don't have to think too hard about that when you're playing, particularly when you're doing analingus. You're mostly or exclusively playing on the outside of the body. But where the anus is, back here toward the butt cheeks, in between them, that area of the body is super sensitive because the neurology of that area makes it feel or makes it be served by nerves roughly in the same way as the mouth is. And everybody knows the mouth has got plenty of nerves. So there's a little bit of a sphincter above that, some muscles that can tighten up the anus so that we can run around and relax and not worried about whether or not our anus is tight enough. Most of us have anuses that are maybe even tighter than they need to be, but the external area and the sphincter that goes an inch or so into the body is a sensitive area for many people. And we'll talk more about safer play and techniques of play too, but just remember that that's an area of the body that can really cause people a lot of pleasure when it's stimulated.
Great. So let's talk about a couple of the quick common misconceptions. Carol mentioned some already, which is that for oral sex that you need a super long tongue. I often call it the Gene Simmons tongue, like the kiss tongue. And, though that can be quite pleasurable for numerous things, having smaller tongues is totally fine because, again, when we're talking about especially cunnilingus, a lot of that attention is going to be brought around the clitoris. For most people, that's where they're going to find the more sensation and a higher probability of orgasm is from their clitoris. And so that's going to be really important. Whereas again, mentally, a lot of times people think sex, and especially when they think, vulva sex, they think penetration is what that person wants. And so the idea is I need to penetrate them with my tongue. And though that might feel really good for some folks and they might enjoy that sensation, it's always good to check out and kind of check in with your person on what they're really looking for, what they enjoy doing oral. And, if you don't really know for sure, kind of trying all the ground. So you don't need a long tongue to stimulate. You also don't need to fit everything in your mouth, as Carol said. Especially when we're talking about penises, there tends to be this large focus on how do I provide deep throat? Deep throat is the ultimate, right? And in the reality, it can be quite fun, but there are lots of other places and ways to really stimulate the penis into which it's having optimal oral. So that's just one way, and you don't need to know every single way. And I also
more about that too. Don't
yes.
worry, people. We're not just telling you don't have to do deep throat. We're going to say more about it.
Yeah, I'll tell you how to do deep throat in a minute.
Yeah.
I also like to remind people that you don't need a clever technique. If you're somebody who's read a lot of these kind of how do I perform oral on my partner books, a lot of times they'll say things like, like hum a tune or song, or do the alphabet with your tongue, or any of these things. And though that might be helpful for some people, it's kind of like counting steps when you're dancing, and it can really kind of take away from the experience for both you and your partner involved. And so I like to encourage people to avoid those kind of quick techniques, or this idea that there's a specific kind of, go left, then right, then counterclockwise, and then you unlock orgasm kind of idea. It's not cheat codes. It's not a video game. And everybody operates differently. And so do not be surprised if one person really enjoys, licking, whereas the other person really enjoys more sucking. And then another person really enjoys more of a flicking motion. And throughout your life, if you're only performing just one of these things, assuming that's what everyone wants, you're going to miss out. All right. So let's talk real quick about some of the things to use when you're performing on oral in any way. So you have your mouth. You want to focus on your mouth and all of the great things that are going on with your mouth. You have the whole mouth to play with. So again, not just focusing on the tongue. You have your lips. And so whether you have full lips or thin lips, your lips play a huge role. They have a different size. They have a different feeling and texture. You have different nerve endings around the lips that'll provide different sensation. And so really kind of involving the lips into the play as well, deep kissing over the genitals. I know it might sound surprising, but you can definitely make out with genitals in a way that feels really great for both you and your partner. So lips can be a really good part of that, using the full part of your mouth. Tongues. You have a tongue, regardless of its size. You can use the tip of the tongue. I have a short tongue, so you won't really see it. And that is going to be providing very pinpointed stimulation, or you can use the flat of your tongue, the whole pad, and it's going to provide more of a broad sensation. And actually, Carol and I talk about this all the time when we're describing vibrators, and how somebody might like pinpointed vibration like a bullet, where somebody might like broad sensation vibrator like a wand. And that applies to same with the mouth, and that some people might have very specific areas in which they like touch. right here underneath the head on the frenulum, or right here underneath the hood to the left. And in those situations, they might want the tip of the tongue as opposed to the flat, where somebody might want that really kind of long, ice cream stroke up.
Also, Andy, the tongue is a muscle, right? So regardless of whether you're going pinpoint or flat, you can have it be kind of tensed up, and so it's firmer. It's going
Hmm.
to give a sort of a more like a finger type of sensation, or you can have it softened up so that it's going to be real lush and feel more like lips, or a much softer kind of an approach. And both of those can be fantastic for oral and good for different kinds of things, but also good to alternate. So pay attention to that too. That way you don't have to remember the alphabet, but there's some extra technique that you can keep track of if you want.
Absolutely. The throat. So this is primarily going to be for fellatio, but utilizing your throat also as a place of stimulation. And so really understanding the different depths of your mouth and how that's going to change in sensation for your partner. As WAP says, I want to touch the little dangly thing that swings in the back of your throat. Some people really enjoy the sensation of reaching the back of the throat and the kind of muscle that exists there, that you can kind of squeeze the swallow muscle. And so performing that swallowing sensation over the head of the penis, for example, can feel quite pleasurable. So if you have the ability to practice and utilize your throat, that can be quite stimulating for your partner. Now, teeth, I threw in there for two reasons. One, as a be aware of, because this is an important part of your mouth that you want to know and have kind of intention around. You don't want your teeth to accidentally scrape over your partner. It's especially if you've got sharp teeth, especially if you have braces or things like that, you want to be careful. So typically the idea of either one of these or any of these acts is to kind of cover your teeth with your lips. But also there are times where you might enjoy utilizing carefully teeth in your play. So some people might enjoy nibbling on the labia, for example, or biting on the inner thighs just to kind of get somebody aroused before you perform oral. Some folks might like kind of a gentle teasing bite over the side of the shaft, as opposed to over the head of the penis, where it's way more sensitive and more nerve endings are. And so utilizing and checking in with your partner before doing any of these things can be great, but also kind of noticing all of the ways that you have the full of your mouth to participate in oral.
Remember, asking people how they like something is another form of oral sex. And
Sure is.
communicating like that, especially if you get to a kind of an intense level of play, it's never a bad idea to say, do you like what I'm doing right now? Just
Yes,
remember, you can lift your head up and check in and go right back to what you were doing.
absolutely. Um, so in this one, I like to remind people that it's okay to use your hands, unless you're in a scene in which you are agreed to not use your hands. But that would be kink related and a little different. And so in here, if we are talking about performing oral, freely and how you'd like, using your hands can be a really great thing. You can use your fingers to perform, internally on your partner, so you can finger them vaginally while performing oral. You can finger them anally while performing oral, or both if you've got both hands working, which is pretty dope. You can also use your hands to perform hand jobs while performing oral. And this is especially great if your partner has extra length and you're finding that that's a little tricky for you to operate all in your mouth, or maybe you want to make sure that they're getting some stimulation around the shaft too, then you can definitely incorporate your hands into that. So that can be really great.
And if you're doing both things at the same time, you're possibly moving your partner into the space of a blended orgasm. So clitoral plus vaginal, or penile plus anal, or even reaching your hands up above their waist and playing with their breasts, or just grabbing them. There's all kinds of things you could be doing with your hands, including touching yourself while giving oral to someone else.
That was good, Carol. I forgot that one in there. Good job.
Right? I think that's important.
Hell yeah. Okay, so use your everything. This is, like put your back into it, is how I kind of think of it. Um, when you're performing oral, it is also more than just your mouth. So use your full body, and that might include using your breasts and performing, kind of a tit job over the penis, or even just using the breasts and rubbing them over the vulva, which can be incredibly titillating, haha, while performing oral. Using your eyes, looking up into your partner's eyes while performing oral can be an incredibly intimate act, and can also be incredibly erotic. So making sure that you kind of incorporate that too. You don't have to kind of close your eyes and grit through it. It can be something that you feel a lot of, connection with your sweetie with. Using your sounds and your words. So as Carol mentioned, also asking those questions, which you can do in a sexy way. It doesn't have to be like, hey, does this feel good? Like it could be, oh, do you like when I'm stroking you like this? Or, working it in a way that really kind of, oh, I love the way you sound with my mouth, when I'm going down on you or whatever. So having this connection to the act beyond just performing can be really a great way to feel connected to your partner.
And don't forget that them talking to you is part of the mix too. If you want them to tell you a story, or you want to ask them to let you know when anything is particularly wonderful, you want to learn, get your library of the moves that they especially enjoy going in your head.
This is a
Have
great
them
time to
tell
give that
you.
feedback. Yeah, you feel
Yeah.
amazing. Yes, absolutely.
And we didn't mention it on our list, but this picture of the person using their words down below. Also, I see their pretty hair. And don't forget that the hair and the hairless parts of your body are going to feel different on somebody's genitals too. Use your everything.
Absolutely. If you've got facial hair, the mustache rides thing is a thing for a reason. Incorporate it, work that full beard on your partner if they enjoy that. There's definitely a way in which you can use everything that you have to your advantage in the situation. All right. We're going to do a giveaway.
Hey, it's a special time.
I love giving stuff away, and this is actually a really sweet little gift set you get here. You're gonna get the Good Vibrations, the Good Vibes bag. It's a drawstring bag that you can put all these goodies in, and you're going to get a Lingo vibrator. So it's a tongue vibrator. It actually has a little rubber ring, and it goes around your tongue, and you can turn it on and get about 30 minutes of vibration to it. So that might be one act or several acts if you choose to use it over multiple times, and it's fun for all types of bodies. You'll also get a bottle of Wicked flavored lubricant. So those are really amazing, and I actually really like the way these are made. They, with really safe ingredients, and they do a lot of work to make sure that everything is FDA approved and all this really great stuff. So Wicked
And
lubricants are
tasty.
swell.
And
And
tasty.
tasty. Yeah, actually, they're really
Flavors. These
tasty.
people make really good flavors.
And you're gonna get a good head sleeve, and I freaking love these sleeves because you just kind of throw a little bit of, you can see it's hollow in the inside there, and you throw a little lubricant in there and you stroke it over the penis. This is one of those things where you could really work your hands for performing oral, and an open sleeve is a really great way to do it, as opposed to some of the other sleeves that are usually closed, so you can't really work your mouth with it too. So if you've ever heard the grapefruiting your man thing, this is the way to do it without citrus. So really fun. And let's show you how you can win this product. So we're gonna ask you, what is homologous to the clitoris? Type that in the Q&A real quick. And the first person that gets it right will get the prize.
All right, we have a winner. I'm gonna DM them.
Yes, we
Right
have a
on.
winner.
And thank you for helping out.
Thank you, Good Vibes.
Any-
Awesome. So for folks that didn't know, it is the penis, as Carol mentioned, which is really great information to know. I think that honestly, we all could have done a lot better in sex ed if we'd learned that. So good for you. and congrats.
Yeah, that wasn't mostly what they were teaching us in sex ed. Mostly it was, it's very dangerous to do all these
Right.
things. But
How to
there's
not
there's
something.
some basic factual science and anatomy that you can actually have some fun with once you know it.
So let's get into some of these toys. Use your toys. I, again, love this product. So I'm just going to give you a quick little demo here because sometimes people are like, oh, that looks so small. How is that going to ever go over anything? Yeah, well, lube. That's how. And lubricant is your friend. And I'll talk about why lube is great for oral too. There we go. Got it over there. And so again, slides up and down, super easy. And you have this whole area to work with your mouth. And it makes a great solo stroker toy. So you can use it by yourself. These are fabulous products for oral. I will also say a vibrating cock ring can be fun. Same kind of idea, but instead of it being where it's typically worn over on top of the penis, if you provide it kind of underneath, you could provide more kind of testicular vibration while performing oral, which could be fun for some people. Or if you put them behind the testicles, it could be perineum stimulation, which some people really enjoy. And also you've got that constriction of the cock ring, which is going to have a kind of firmer erection feel for the person with the shaft. So that's kind of cool.
You could bring it up near the frenulum too, but then if you use your mouth on that, you would vibrate your teeth. Some people don't like that sensation, but give it a try.
But if you're working other areas and
Yeah.
letting this work its magic down here, let's
Yeah,
say you were
the person
working
who
these
said,
guys.
why don't they ever touch my balls? Well, this would be a time to try that out.
Absolutely. Kegel exercisers are one of my favorite products to talk about during oral. These are super swell because most Kegel exercisers have a little rattle to them because they're weighted interiorly. And so that's nice because if this is inside the vagina, then as that person is doing any kind of pelvic thrusting, which usually happens during cunnilingus, they're going to feel that extra kind of rattling inside their body. They're going to have something they can clench down on as well. So they have this kind of sensation like maybe a finger or something is inside them. And it is a perfect time to exercise and work out your Kegel muscles. Kind of a twofer with that pleasure and health.
Plus, I think that these are always great G-spot toys. Lots of people think that they're going to feel G-spot sensations during intercourse or other kinds of things. That doesn't always happen because of the anatomy. But when these balls are inside, a lot of times they do stimulate the G-spot. And if you're doing oral with somebody with these in, you can tug on that little string that they come attached with and add to the stimulation that they're receiving that way as well.
I like to call that a little tug of war. Yeah.
Terrific toys for health and pleasure.
Absolutely. Definitely can stimulate that anus. You're already down there. This is going to be a great time. And so, we have some great examples like the Aneros prostate massager. These are super fun because they've got this great finger-sized kind of shape to them that perfectly kind of presses into the prostate. Perfectly presses into the prostate. Ha! So many P's. And so as you are also Kegeling or clenching and doing that pelvic kind of thrusting, you too will get that prostate kind of pressure happening while a little bit on the perineum as well. So many P's. And so that can be quite fun. Also, any butt plug will work. This is a Dayology anal dilator, and also just something that is really easy to sit down on. So if you're in a seated position, this would be really easy to have while you're receiving oral.
And again, we'd be talking a blended orgasm if somebody had a prostate in particular, and there was penis stuff and prostate stuff going on at the same time. That would be extra sensation for them to enjoy.
Shout out to silicone lubricant. One of the things that's really kind of great about silicone lubricant is that it's flavorless. And so if you are somebody who has found that your, liquid silk or whatever you've got near the bed has a real bitter taste to it when it's in your mouth, and you really do want some kind of oral lubrication for performing oral, this is silicone lubricant is a really great way to go. The only thing is to be careful not to get it on silicone toys. So if your toys are, like in this case, a silicone coated, then you just wouldn't want to make sure that these overlap. But a little bit goes a long way, provides that extra glide. You don't have to worry about getting dry mouth, which is really nice. If you're able to get CBD infused lubricants, one of the things that people have found is that those can often feel and act more like a edible when you are performing oral on your partner. And so that's kind of a fun thing of also getting your cannabis from oral. So just again, lots of different ways in which there is ways to incorporate oral sex into other types of play or things that you might be doing. Cool. So let's get into some specifics, just because we went over, I like to do a wax on, wax off approach of like showing you a bazillion things and then at the end showing you that those things lined up to, you know, oh my God, now I can not only paint a fence, but do a cool karate move. So with what we learned today, we remember that for cunnilingus specifically, it's the clit's time to shine. This is a great time to focus on the clitoris unless otherwise told, and to really get to know it more, especially if your sex primarily has focused on penetration in other areas. This can be a good time to kind of switch that up a bit. I like to encourage people to meet the friends of the area. So that's, you know, get to know those lips. You know, the labia is going to be super important. Knowing how people enjoy that stimulation, if they like their hood sucked on or not, if they like insertion or not, anally or vaginally, things like that can be really important. And I like to encourage people to stay a while, enjoy the sights. So this is the kind of you know, take your jacket off, you're going to be here for a while kind of thing, because people often think that cunnilingus is a cool, I licked it, I'm done now, right? Like an idea of a quick preheat the oven, but really it is for a lot of people one of the kind of more focused and best kind of ways to get direct clitoral stimulation. So stay there, hang out there, get to know the area. If you think you're there too long, stay a little longer, and definitely check in with your partner along the way, because if you're doing things that they don't enjoy, you don't necessarily want to stay there and do that too long. But if you think it's just a quick one and done, I'd encourage you to just kind of really enjoy the experience.
And Andy, I really am glad that you said the sort of warm up notion, because so many people have this notion that, well, that's how you turn somebody on, right? But the fact that arousal starts from the time that you start getting involved physically with somebody, sometimes before that, sometimes when you're just seeing each other across the room, can also mean that arousal, if it builds before you make contact with the clitoris at all, whether it's with your mouth, your hand, or what, that will actually add to the enjoyment and pleasure potential of the act, which means people who zoom in there, do a little bit of hard sucking. If your partner ever seems to be trying to crawl up the bed behind you when you're going down on them, lighten up on it a little bit the next time you try, because sometimes it can be so intense, and intense pleasurably, but also intense like, whoa, that's intense. So the idea that you are building somebody up, think about that slope that trip that you might be taking somebody on while you're staying there a while, because you really are taking them on a journey.
Absolutely. All right, fellatio tips. So crowning achievement is, again, working around the crown of the penis, the head of the penis, the frenulum. These areas are going to be the most sensitive parts. They're going to be the most homologous to the clitoris. Makes sense. So providing sensation around here is going to be key, and that can be really amazing for a lot of people. The balls in your court. So these guys are here. If the person attached to them enjoys that stimulation, you know, go ahead and give them a gentle kind of pull or a rub, maybe gentle sucking. That can be enjoyed. Some people like the sensation of having their balls pulled and sucked on, and so doing that. And massage of the mouth. So again, if you're thinking of this, again, as everybody has kind of what I've mentioned with all the other parts, as just penetration, and you're just thinking about like, let me just like, up and down until they ejaculate, that may or may not be pleasurable for either of you. And so again, think of it as using your whole mouth, using the whole shaft, and it's a massage of the mouth. And so as you provide a massage on somebody's body, you're not just kind of doing the same motion again and again, and that's the massage. It's an entire experience of rubbing and connecting with the body. And so you want to kind of practice in the same way.
Yeah, you can swirl the tongue around the shaft. You can do all kinds of different things. And this might be a good time to mention a little bit more about deep throating, because as Andy pointed out with the toys that he showed, there's lots of ways to get comparable sensation to deep throating or pleasurable for the whole length of the shaft without getting the whole penis all the way into the throat. Although some people really like that, doing it and having it done to them. So one of the things that's a useful tip and trick for learning how to deep throat and not having the gag reflex take over or not feeling like you can't breathe is when you are breathing in, let the penis go into your mouth deeper. When you're breathing out, let it go out, and really pay attention to your breath so that you get enough breath to keep you from getting scared and anxious. Sometimes this can bring on anxiety attacks for people. That's not so sexy. So and slow it down. The whole idea that somebody is face fucking is a thing that you can do, but that is not all that fellatio is. It's not even all that deep throat is. And in order for you to do your best work or play, get comfortable with what you're doing and tell your partner to lie there and enjoy it and give you feedback, not start using you as an orifice so that they can get it all done. There's a lot going on when you do oral, and the person who is doing the stimulating really can learn a lot, get better at it, and find their own power and enjoyment in it if they can explore. So I really encourage that.
A couple other things that you kind of touched on there, Carol, which I really enjoys. So the breathing can play a real big part in this, and especially with fellatio, because that's an area where, again, you might have the sensation like you're choking. And so if you have that reflex like you're choking, you will clench up and feel like you can no longer breathe. And so some ways to kind of work through that. I always say that practice makes progress. And so, in this clip, we've got a banana here. I wouldn't recommend a banana with sprinkles and stuff on it, but just a plain banana. But you can practice with something soft and kind of taking it down your throat while breathing either through the sides of your mouth or through your nose. And this has actually been a really helpful tip for me, even when I'm kind of lightly choking on food and I start to panic a little bit, is, if I can breathe through my nose, I'm still okay. And so just kind of like breathing through my nose, slowing down the sensation of choking until you can kind of push or move through it. And so practicing that with either a dildo, your fingers, your partner's fingers, a banana, a popsicle can be really helpful. Popsicles are actually really helpful because they kind of cool and numb a little bit in a nice kind of gentle way, not in a numbing cream way. We'll talk about that later. And so that can be kind of a fun way to practice kind of taking something to your throat and trying not to freak out or get nervous or bite down.
And lubricant can help with deep throat too. One of the reasons to use lube during fellatio might really be to have a little bit of less of a catch in your throat when the penis goes there. And
Yes.
it's slipperier, it becomes more sensual, and it's not as scary.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see now, analingus tips. And I didn't mention earlier, we do have a Q&A section at the end, so we'll get to a lot of these questions. If you have an immediate question, go ahead and put them up in the Q&A. We have somebody there who can answer them right away, but then we'll also do some verbal Q&As towards the end. Analingus tips. So brimming, ass licking, all of this. So clean workspace, clean canvas. This is a good time to take a shower beforehand, to kind of know what you're working with. And again, because you are working with an area that also now we're talking about hygiene, and how hygiene can affect things like, E. coli or even Hep. It's important um, to make sure that you are thoroughly bathed, and that the area that you're working with is going to be clean. Now, one of the things that's kind of cool is that you're less likely to get irritation from rooming if it's somebody that you're really more familiar with. So if it's a long-term partner, that's cool, as opposed to maybe somebody you just kind of met at the club that night. And so kind of figuring out your comfort with that can be really helpful. Rimming is primarily working outside the body. So you are working on, I like to make the kind of little hand, there we go, we'll make that the anus, the little star kind of there of the anus, and how you are stimulating this whole area with your tongue. And you can do that flat tip, you can do that slightly inserted with the going inside part. But again, it's your tongue over this entire kind of sensitive collection of nerve endings. And so you can do a lot of sensation around that. This is a great place to add lubricant too, so that it's going to have that real slidey, slippy feel for both you and your partner. Carol, do you want to add anything to that? Or
I just want to also add that it's possible to just enjoy external analingus, but of course, a lot of people like to explore anal insertion, and this is an actually great way to start the whole journey of getting more friendly with anal play. And
Absolutely.
There's lots more to learn about that. I'm sure we're going to do one of these days. I'm sure we'll do a class on that too. And there's good information out there for that. But starting to make friends with an area of the body that many people have felt shame around, this can be powerful play. So just even emotional play for some people. So just respect all of that. And we are going to talk some more about safer sex at the end. So if anybody's going, what are they saying? What are they saying? We're going to talk about the barriers. We're going to talk about the things. So
cool. There we go. So here's the question on safer sex. So Carol, how do you practice safer sex for oral?
So the basis of safer sex really has to do with using barriers. And barrier methods are the way that we started to come into some degree of control with the HIV epidemic, and they have become possibly relevant again with COVID, because people are finding, scientists are finding COVID in people's feces sometimes. So we don't even know if you can
and their
catch COVID that
sperm,
way, but maybe you can. And it's always been a better safe than sorry kind of a sentiment that we want to share with people. And also that you can do it comfortably, do it every time, eroticize it, have fun with it. So when I say barriers, I'm talking about either a rubber dam or plastic wrap over the vulva or anus. Look what you've got there, eh? You're ready for it. And that is also something that can be fun to play with because it makes the sensations change a little bit. If it tends to blur sensation out more than the person who is being gone down on likes, put a little bit of lubricant on their side, like put lubricant on the vulva or anus side of the dental dam, and you find that the sensation will carry better. For penises, a condom is a great barrier. You can put a couple of drops of lubricant into the head of that condom before it goes on the head of the penis, and that will make the condom move on their penis, something like the way a foreskin would, and will add a little bit of extra sensation in that context too. If you are doing fellatio on a penis with a condom on it, you really might want a little bit of lubricant for your mouth, because the friction feel is different between skin and rubber, or skin and whatever kind of faux rubber you might be using. And if you are sensitive to latex, get a non-latex alternative, because they do exist. We sell them at Good Vibrations. It's really a much better idea not to do fellatio on rubber if you're allergic to latex. Don't even try that. And what else? What did I miss, Andy? What other things do we want to say about safer sex and oral?
No, I think that was pretty swell. For
covered it
for that. I'm for safer sex. If somebody else has another question, we'll get to that. Next one is what about numbing creams? And so this is typically asked about for blowjobs, and particularly deep throating enthusiasts. There's this concept that if we numb an area, that then you will be able to do the act, and especially some people think, oh, and then you'll be able to replicate the act later because you've popped a cherry of said act. And this is the same thought people have about numbing creams for anal play. We're pretty firmly against numbing creams for several reasons. One is that you can definitely do damage without feeling it, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to do any damage to your throat or to your partner's throat and have them not be aware of it at that time, but later on know that they tore something in the back of their throat, which can happen. And you also, numbing cream is going to numb out all sensations. It's not going to just numb out irritation, soreness, pain. So that also means that both of you will not feel very much of anything because you're getting numbing cream on the head of your penis and they're getting numbing cream on their throat. And at that point, it's, why are you doing it? So what I typically recommend is that if you are nervous or kind of looking for those ways to perform deep throat, really do that practice makes progress method of working on it, practicing your breathing, learning your reflexes, trying different positions. Laying on your back and receiving a penis is much easier because it follows the throat patterns as opposed to being on your hands and knees. So there are many ways in which you can kind of achieve your goals without having to numb yourself for your partner's benefit. And that's something that I would recommend instead. And then what about flavored lubricants? I am super pro flavored lubricants, and that may surprise some folks. But flavored lubricants are something that I think can be really utilized in a lot of different ways for oral pleasure. And one of the things that I don't like about flavored lubricants, they often get sold or marketed as this is going to taste better than your partner kind of concept. I think that's crap. You want to taste your partner. You want to be able to taste the vulva, you want to be able to taste pussy, you want to be able to taste cock. And so when you want to be able to eat ass, you want to taste ass. And so you don't want to have pineapple flavor all of a sudden or anything like that. But here is where flavored lubricants are swell. Particularly if you are using a barrier. Not many people enjoy the taste of that latex. So condom or dental dam or saran wrap, which is not latex, but using these things without lubricant might not be as fun as using a really nice flavored lubricant on there. Also, flavored lubricants are great incentivizing kind of things for folks that are nervous. A lot of times we do get the folks that come in wanting to learn the techniques and practice the alphabet and things like that because they get more in their head about what should I be doing for my partner, and that's really sweet. But sometimes their partner will just say, honey, just lick this off. Just focus on licking this off. And if that helps to kind of calm your mind or get you in a certain kind of rhythm, then super go for it. The other thing is that if you ask any of our staff members, you'll know that we often go and sneak little samples of flavored lubricant throughout the day because stuff just tastes good. And so if you find that you are squirting a little bit on your hand, you're like, man, I can't stop licking my hand. You don't usually have an urge to start licking all over your hand, but you might then. So if it's going to help to encourage that kind of playness and kind of change in eroticizing bodies, then I say go for it. But if you're doing it to hide a flavor or scent of a body, then I say check your thoughts behind that, and then recheck in with your sweetie.
Although it's worth saying that there are some medications and
Yes.
situations like that that can change a person's bodily fluid, smell, and flavor, especially flavor. If somebody is on chemo, for example,
chemotherapy,
or taking
penicillin is a super popular one.
Another one. Maybe you do want to throw a little pineapple flavor on top of that if the sort of a metallic or chemical flavor is coming through, and that can happen. And often the person who has had to take the meds feels a little daunted by all of that, especially if they realize that that's happening. You can love them anyway. And if flavored lube helps you do that, that's just great.
Absolutely. Carol, you mentioned one thing earlier about the condoms. I want to just throw that in there real quick, which is that I did have a customer once who was looking for a solution for performing a blowjob for her partner because they really wanted to come in her mouth, but she really didn't like the taste of semen or the experience of cum being shot in her mouth. And we worked out that condoms for blowjobs really worked for both of them because he could get off and she could not have to worry about the semen. And so again, finding these really kind of ways in which they might be unique solutions for your particular pairings or needs can be really helpful.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing to that too. Actually, I mentioned HIV and I mentioned the possibilities around COVID being transmissible this way. I didn't say anything about an STI that we know can be transmissible through oral and that can have some pretty serious effects on some people who get it, which is HPV, human papillomavirus. So if you're all thinking, well, I'm not running around in any communities where there's any HIV, in the first place, check yourself because you don't know. You can't tell by looking. It doesn't have to do with somebody's identity, none of that. But even if it's true that you're not running around and encountering anyone who might have HIV, HPV is pretty common in the population. There's a vaccination for it now, but not everyone has gotten it. So be aware of health issues when you're playing because you live a lot longer and a lot healthier life and have a lot more fun sexually if you do.
So that last slide that we want to just come to here is just to remind you that no matter how you orally tease and please, that it's always a good idea to check in with your partner. As we've been saying, communication is one of the biggest parts of oral sex. It starts with that. And so checking in with each other, not replicating just what you've read in a book, what you've seen in a class, or what worked for your one sweetie in high school is going to be really helpful so that way you know that you are providing the type of oral that you feel proud of and also that you're receiving the most optimal sensations that you can. Cool, so now let's get into those Q&As. Awesome. So just so you know, we're going to stop that recording so you don't have to worry about your questions being answered live. But let's see what kind of questions we have from our people.
So we've got a lot of questions coming in. So we're gonna try our best to get through as many of these as we can. We do have a lot of questions here. The good thing is that if we can't get to you now, you can always DM us on either Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. We are at Good Vibes Toys. So check us out there. Also on our website, we have a contact us sheet. But yeah, let's get into it. So we have a question that says, what would you say to someone who is concerned that toys will, quote, set the bar too high for sex without them?
Well, Carol.
Well, it's such a good question, and many people are really concerned about it. And if all you do is connect pleasure, and sorry about my sirens out here, it's a city, connect pleasure with toy use, then all the body parts and human form sensations may not feel like they measure up. Be real open-minded about all the different ways that you get pleasure. That's my starter insight for you, is that don't just aim for the kind of sensation that you would get from a vibrator when you're having oral, because they're two different sensations. All the different kinds of sex play are different sensations from each other. And people will have preferences, but there isn't any reason that you can't enjoy a wide range of them. Andy, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just like to kind of remind people that we receive pleasure from lots of different things throughout our lives, and it's usually sex that we feel the most kind of insecure around. Of you know, I want to be the only one or the best one, but it's like you know, somebody might really enjoy going to concerts, and somebody might really enjoy going, you know, playing video games, and you might enjoy both, and on different days you like one more than the other. And it's the same thing with partners and sex toys. You know, there are times where you just want like 3 minutes alone with your vibrator just to get off and go to bed. And there are other times where you want, you know, the smell of your partner and their specific sounds and the, you know, the roughness of their facial hair and all of this kind of connection stuff. So the reality is that pleasure should be kind of broadened, and there are lots of ways in which you can experience it. You don't have to feel like it's only one.
Awesome.
What else we
So
got?
the next question that we have is the penis head ever too sensitive like a clitoris can be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are plenty of folks with penises that are going to say, oh, that's a little too sensitive, or you're going a little too fast, or, oh, wow, like, I can really, when you're licking with your tongue that way, it feels rough. And so again, kind of understanding that you can vocalize those things and that they can be slightly switched by maybe adding a little lubricant, maybe slowing down a little bit, maybe slower strokes. So there are lots of different ways in which you can incorporate it to make it less uncomfortable for you.
There are two things in particular that people might want to watch out for in this regard. And one of them is suction. Lots of times people really think they have to throw all their cheek muscles into the suction when they're doing fellatio. And that can be too much for some people. Some people really, really like a lot of sensation, but not everyone does. And the other context is if someone is uncircumcised, there can be extra sensitivity associated with the fact that they're not. So the extra nerve endings that are present in the foreskin, it can be possible for somebody to feel more sensitive than someone who's uncircumcised. In a context like that, you just want to lighten up some.
Yeah.
Great. So we had a couple of questions actually about squirting. But one of the ones that we got is re-squirting, does it come from the urethra?
It does. Yes, that's great. On any anatomy set that we're talking about here, which is really cool. That's one of those great homologous things, is that the ejaculate will come out of the urethra. If we're talking about a vulva, then yes, vaginal secretion or wetness will come out of the vagina, but ejaculate will be found to come out of the urethra or the pee hole, if
I've
that's easier to think of.
Let's see, I've got three more.
Yep.
So how do you go about picking the best condom or dental dam? Condoms don't taste great.
They sure don't. So, I actually really enjoy non-lubricated condoms, if you can find them, and to add a flavored lubricant or a silicone lubricant. Now, silicone lubricant is usually what is found on latex condoms, but I think it really just carries some of that latex and aluminum flavor when you're just going straight from a lubricated condom, and that's not really great. And so I typically like to provide my own lubricant if I'm going to use a condom, whether it be something silicone, so no flavor, or something flavored so that it's just a little bit more enticing than the flavor of the condom. Dental dams wise, they do have they're not lubricated, but they often are flavored by a powder. So like this dental dam here, it's the mint flavor. And so I think it has that kind of taste to it. Like if you lick the wrapper of your gum wrapper, like it kind of has that flavor to it, but it's not lubricated. And so these can be nice, or if you're just using something like saran wrap or plastic wrap, again, flavored lubricant can do wonders on that.
And plastic wrap isn't going to have much of a taste.
Yeah.
And if somebody's using condoms, they might want to try polyisoprene or polypropylene, one of the polyurethane. Sorry, all those polys. There's so much poly in the world these days, because it is more of a plasticky, not flavored situation. It doesn't taste like flesh in your mouth for sure. Feel like it's wrapped up, but it might not have that taste that latex has, which not everybody enjoys.
So an example of that would be like the Trojan Supra, if you find it on our website.
Awesome. We've got time for two more. So we've got one that says, my partner loves analingus. How do I clean myself so I don't feel dirty?
Okay. So I like to recommend, well, there's a few things. One, if you're cool and you can afford a bidet, they're great investments. And I feel like you can never feel cleaner than if you use a bidet every day. But if that's not something you can put in your house, I'm going to admit I got mine when that toilet paper shortage scared the life out of all of us. But hopping in the shower before analingus, cleaning the area, gentle soap, externally is primarily what we're talking about here, but it's not a bad thing to go ahead and do what I like to call the kind of insert the finger in the window washer, kind of sweeping around the anus, just to kind of really feel like you've got that first inch or so also in a place that feels pristine for you to allow your partner to be in. And that should be really all you need to feel pretty comfortable in that area.
Awesome. And then the last question is, what are some good positions to perform or receive oral sex in?
So I mentioned some that were good for deep throating or fellatio earlier. Carol, do you have any good examples for cunnilingus?
Well, yeah, and actually the first one that I'm thinking of is actually also good for fellatio. Many people have heard about 69, where you do oral sex simultaneously, and one person is in one way and the other person is the other way. Now that can be super distracting, and not everybody loves 69. Some people really do love it, but I suggest doing a position where one person is lying on their back and the other one is kneeling over them without doing 69, because that way that you can get the penis curve and the throat curve in the right way. You can come at the vulva from a direct way. Kneeling in between somebody's legs will do that too, but if you're over the side of the bed and sort of curving up to them, it can hurt your neck less. I had a relationship with a chiropractor when I was younger. And can I just say, I recommend that to all of you. But if you don't have a chiropractor in your life for the intimate moments, sometimes thinking about the way you wind up feeling after you've done oral for a little bit, think about how you can support yourself with a pillow under your chest, say, or some way that you're not making your head carry weight while you do your thing with your face.
Great example. Awesome.
Carolyn, Andy, thank you so much. Again, if y'all did not get your question answered, we apologize. We had a lot of them coming in. Definitely feel free to shoot us a DM or email us through our website.
Absolutely. And join us next time.